Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance Network, and today I am sharing with you a new video in our ongoing investigation into the Finders cult. Before we get into that, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com so you can subscribe to all of our content. Scroll down here just a little bit and sign up for our newsletter. I send out a weekly newsletter every Saturday or Sunday, and you can get easy updates right to your email box. And thank you for continuing to support us. I also want to remind you guys that our documentaries, including this upcoming Finders documentary, are funded via our Patreon supporters on patreon.com/DerrickBroze, where you can support for as little as $1 a month. All of that money goes directly to paying our editor for the videos that we're doing for the Jeffrey Epstein documentary, for the upcoming Finders documentary, for our upcoming Pyramid of Power documentary, and we would appreciate your support and help so we can continue. So let's get right into this. In case you haven't seen Finders and Investigation number 1, I recommend you start there because I'm not going to be rehashing too much of what I already covered in there. We're going to be moving on to the next details. So please go back and watch that if you have not. But let's go right ahead. Now last week I showed you this. This is my file, as you can see here. And this is from my Finders folder. Last week we touched on this. We looked at our timeline of events and showed that starting on Wednesday, February 4th, 1987, 2 men were arrested with children in custody, taken in by police in Tallahassee, Florida, and that led to an investigation that spanned the entire country, from Metro Police in D.C. Raiding warehouses and raiding apartments, to police in Virginia, the U.S. Customs getting involved, the FBI getting involved, and eventually the whole thing disappearing very quickly, and the people being told, there's nothing to see here, we made a mistake, there's no child pornography, there's no trafficking, there's no Satanism, there's nothing going on. And our goal here with this documentary is to get to the bottom, to find out what exactly happened. The second part we're going to be looking at here is the known documentation. So what you're looking at here, hopefully you can see this all right, is, oh, that's not too much. You're looking at here is the known documentation related to the Finders. So we have the Tallahassee police reports from 1987, and those are when the first arrests happened. Those have all been released, and they're available online via Freedom of Information Act requests. Then we have the DC Metro police reports, which many of these reports are heavily redacted, but I'm looking for more information related to those. We have what is known as the Investigative Leads Memo on Marion Petty, who is the founder of the Finders that we'll be discussing in the next video. And this memo was leaked to a journalist named Daniel Brandt, and it was just a plain sheet of paper. It didn't have any government markings or anything, but it was titled Investigative Leads Memo, and it was produced sometimes during the 1980s with an unknown authorship, but it does play some important roles in this story, so we'll talk about that. Then we have the U.S. Customs Service documents, which involve Customs Officer Raymond J. Martinez, who filed his report. His report was one of the most detailed aspects that we have of this case, where he describes instructions to buy children. He describes this, international network. His statements were later dismissed, and it was claimed that he made mistakes, and he was reprimanded. His report was pretty much just dismissed and seen as, horribly wrong. And other agents who were there said, "Oh, we never saw any of these things he claimed," and that was kind of the impetus to make this whole story go away. Number 5, we have FBI files that were provided via Freedom of Information Act request via the website Muckrock. If you don't know about Muckrock, it is a website that helps journalists and open records requesters more easily get access to the information they wanted and can help them with costs of funding and things like that. So somebody filed Freedom of Information Act requests related to the Finders FBI files, and that was released just this year in 2018. So this is pretty recent. Like I said, this story is 30 years old, but there's still more to uncover. And then we have the FBI files, which are on the FBI's own website, and they are heavily redacted, but all of this together paints a picture and tells what was going on behind the scenes, what the cops were thinking, these sort of things. So we're going to take a few minutes to look at each of these. And now, unfortunately, everything you're looking at here, it is all of this is available online. You're going to have to go do your digging. If anybody wants these documents, you can email me, and I'll give them to you, what I have. But unfortunately, at the moment, I'm not going to release my files to anybody yet. So just let me know, Derrick at theconsciousresistance.com, if you would like to see these documentation. But for those of you who know how to search, you'll find them. Alright, so the Tallahassee Police Department documents. Here we have 73 JPEGs. These are JPEGs taken of the actual original Tallahassee police report. So we can see here child abuse at 600 Myers Park Drive at Myers Park, February 4th, 87, Wednesday, 4:50 p.m. We even got a very specific time in the afternoon, state of Florida, Tallahassee. So, and it describes anonymous tip called in and basically gave them a clue, said there's some well-dressed men and some kids that look a little, not too good hanging out at this park. And that was what began this whole thing. Those anonymous tips led to the arrest of the two men and to taking the kids into custody and the rest of the whole investigation. So some of these are just standard police documentation. And here we'll give a little preview of what this officer is saying. I probably can read it better than you guys can. It says this rider was dispatched to Myers Park in reference to a report of a well-dressed man with white male with several small children who were unkempt. Upon my arrival, I observed two white males dressed in coat and ties. The playground at Myers Park accompanied several small children. I also observed a Dodge van, blue in color with Virginia tags, parked on the playground at Myers Park. This rider noticed that the children, and it describes the ages of children, were very dirty and unkempt. The children had bug bites on their entire bodies and scratches on their legs. This rider spoke to the suspect number 1, who stated that he and suspect number 2 were teachers from Washington, D.C., and they were taking the children en route to Mexico with the children. He stated, number 1 stated they were going to Mexico to set up a school for brilliant children. When asked about the parents of the children, suspect number 1 became very evasive and stated that the children's parents were in Washington, D.C. Subject 2 refused to give this rider any information, and he pretended to faint when told he was being arrested. And apparently there's video of this whole thing. I'm trying to find a copy of the video. I've spoken to some people, because let me tell you this, guys. Look, everything that I've been sharing with you, this information, if you dig hard enough, you can find it. But I'm not just trying to create a documentary that's going to rehash, and that would be good to just get all the information, put it together in a nice package, right? But I don't want to leave people with unanswered questions. I mean, this documentary is not going to solve all the questions, but we're going to come to conclusions, and I'm not ready to share those conclusions yet because honestly I don't know what they are yet. This week I will be spending my week writing the Finder's script. I kind of have a narrative already in my head, but I have to put it all together and make it make sense now. Then I sent it to Jeremy. It's already halfway through November, so I don't think you're going to see this documentary till early, maybe middle of December, and that's just me knowing that this is going to be a lot of work for him because I have to put all this script into something that can make sense, and it's going to be a lot of work for him. But my point is, I've called around. I've found the names of the people who recorded this incident. I've found the names of the police officers. This is the thing. This is what real investigative journalism is about. Say you find a document like this, right? Well, 600 Myers Park Drive. Okay, that's a real place. You could go visit there if you wanted to. You could go search for the names of the officers who wrote these reports and do some digging. His name is T. Mashburn. I'm sure if I dug hard enough, T. Mashburn from Tallahassee Police in 1987, I could probably find that guy's name. Then that would lead me to finding him. So my point is, it's not that difficult. It takes effort, time, maybe a little bit of courage to dig into things that people don't want you to, but you can make it happen. The kids were extremely hungry when they got to the police department, and the older children stated they hadn't eaten since the morning. The children appeared as if they hadn't bathed in several days, and most of them didn't have any underwear. The older children stated that they have to do good things to get food as a reward, and they are given oranges, bananas, carrots, and raw potatoes to eat. Mary, one of the older kids, stated that suspect number 2 was her father, and that John Paul II was her brother. Suspect 2 refused to talk to the individual and to take counselors. So yeah, you can kind of see here. Like I said, this is the children's clothing were extremely filthy, and they had on the mismatched socks. Okay. So as you can see, there's a lot to go into. There's 73 pages of this officer's report, and in other follow-up reports, and on and on and on. And that's part of the story, right? That was the initial report that happened. And then as we go further in, you start seeing that they talk about how they were called by the DC police, and they were notified by the DC police of what was going on. And eventually the DC police reached out to the Tallahassee police and said, hey, we think this might be connected to a group that we know, the Finders. So the children had belonged to a cult that has a name of the Finders. This is same day, 12/15. Shelia Development Training Program. She stated that on Tuesday, she reported to her job site and noticed the trash dumpster was not emptied as it should have been. She stated that she called the city of Tallahassee and asked why. She stated that the person she talked with told her that the truck could not empty the dumpster because a blue van was blocking access to the dumpster. Shelia stated that she did not see the van when she came to work. So this is the beginning of how this whole call happened and who made the call. So again, this is historical documentation. It's important, but we don't have time to get into all of that. But that's the Tallahassee police documents. Then right here, this is what I was saying. This is the U.S. Customs Service documents written by Raymond J. Martinez. And this is an original scanned copy of this. And see, you can see official use only. This is his reports. These are very hard to read. I actually have a transcript of this that I'll read to you in just a second. But you can see Special Agent Walter Kreitlow, Resident Agent in Charge Frederick Hyduk, and then you have the officer who signed himself, which was down here. Respectfully submitted, Raymond J. Martinez, Special Agent, U.S. Customs Service. This is the important document. This is the one that I was talking about that really lays out the case for what we know about this whole thing. So I'm going to read you just briefly to some of this. And this, most of this is just setting up the fact that he gets a call and he gets called into police had received an anonymous telephone call, 2 well-dressed men. So that's the whole case. Children had insect bites. They were dirty. The men were arrested and charged with multiple counts of child abuse. Then we said, all right, here. The office contacted the office of D.C. and spoke with Special Agent Bob Harold, and the agent requested telephone numbers and the names of police persons and area departments that might be aware of said activities described by the children, and to follow up on leads which were the Virginia license plate number, and to check on the men's names with local law enforcement. A short time later, this office was contacted by Detective Jim Bradley of the Washington, D.C. Metro Police. Bradley indicated that the case here in Tallahassee appeared to be strongly related to a case he was currently working on in the D.C. area. He stated that the actions of the 2 men, relative and in custody, might have enough probable cause to search warrants to search premises occupied by a group called the Finders. So they used the arrest of the men and the kind of holding of the kids as like, hey, let's, we're going to go raid this cult that we've been researching and investigating for a little while now and see if there's anything to it. Then Raymond Martinez has directed Bradley to telephone the Tallahassee Police Department and discuss the police directly any activities forthcoming relative to the case. At this time, it was determined there was no customs violations found to exist, and therefore this case is closed pending receipt of additional information. Then he does receive additional information, and basically he gets invited to come do a walkabout and walk through the warehouses as they are raided by the police. And this is where the real shit comes in. On Thursday, February 5th, 87, the duty agent, Bob Harold, received a call from SSA Walter Kreitlow. Kreitlow was seeking assistance in contacting an appropriate local police agency to coordinate in a child abuse investigation with Tallahassee Police Department. Kreitlow further requested assistance in checking some names, addresses, and vehicles through the Customs Child Pornography Unit, and stated that there was some suspicion of the subjects being involved in supplying children for the production of child pornography. Further, he was informed that the Tallahassee Police Department that the children may have been en route to Mexico. The possibility of customs interest in the investigation due to possible violations of the Child Protection Act of '84 and the alleged nexus with the U.S.-Mexican border were discussed and agreed upon. So basically, just the fact that they were traveling across borders and supposedly going to leave the country with kids, it gave the U.S. Customs enough, leeway to say, okay, well, this might involve us. We're going to come on the investigation. U.S. Customs was contacted because the police officers involved suspected the males of being involved in child pornography and knew the Customs Service to have a network of child pornography investigators. So the children were observed. The police were notified by a concerned citizen. So let's go on. He requested that I conduct computer checks on the Customs Child Pornography Unit. The checks were to be conducted on the names, addresses, and vehicle. And let's get to this. After some approximate... Excuse me, guys. I'm trying to find the section I was looking for. Alright. Upon contacting Detective Bradley, I learned that he had initiated an investigation on the 2 addresses provided by the Tallahassee Police Department during December of '86. An informant had given him information regarding a cult, known as the Finders, operating various businesses outside of a warehouse located at 1307 4th Street Northeast, and were supposed to be housing children at these 2 other addresses. And this says the information was specific in describing blood rituals and sexual orgies involving children and a yet unsolved murder in which the Finders may be involved. This information was provided by an informant, and Detective Bradley was able to match some of the children in Tallahassee with the names of the children known to allege to be in the custody of the Finders. Furthermore, Bradley was able to match the tentative ID of the adults with known members of the finders. I stood by while Bradley consulted with Harry Brenner and obtained search warrants of the two premises. So here's where it goes. During the execution of the warrant, I was able to observe and access the entire building. So this officer writing this report saw the entire building, saw large quantities of children's clothing and toys, diapers, clothes. There was one subject on the grounds who was identified as Stuart Silverstone. That name will come in important later. Stuart Miles Silverstone. He was located in a room with several computers, printers, and numerous documents. Cursory examination of the documents revealed detailed instructions for obtaining children for unspecified purposes. The instructions included the impregnation of female members of the community known as the finders, purchasing children, trading, and kidnapping. There were telex messages using MCI account numbers between a computer terminal believed to be located in the same room and others located across the country in foreign locations. So MCI mail is a very early version of email and just communicating digitally, and it was it was apparently being used very widely by this group, and they had numbers for foreign offices from China, the Chinese embassy. They had documentations about Pakistan, but just all kinds. It was obvious that there was some kind of international operation going on here. So one such telex specifically ordered the purchase of 2 children in Hong Kong to be arranged through a contact in the Chinese embassy. Another telex expressed interest in bank secrecy situations. Other documents identified interest in high-tech transfers to the UK. Numerous properties under the control of finders, a keen interest in terrorism, explosives, and evasion of law enforcement. Also found in the computer room was a detailed summary of the events surrounding the arrest and taking into custody of the 2 adults and 6 children the previous night. There was also a set of instructions which appeared to be broadcast via computer network which advised the participants to move the children and keep them moving through different jurisdictions, and instructions on how to avoid police attention. So there may have been more kids there. There may have been, who knows, but the message was sent by someone somewhere to get the heck out of there. And it goes on further detail in the investigation. Now let's get to one of the other important elements of this. On Friday, September 6th, the second day they raided the warehouse, I was able to observe numerous documents which describe explicit sexual conduct between the members of the community known as the finders. I saw a large collection of photographs of unidentified people. Some of them were nudes believed to be members of the finders. There were numerous photos of children, some nude, at least one of which was a photo of a child on display and appeared to accent the child's genitals. I was only able to examine a small amount of the photos at this time. However, one of the officers presented me with a photo album for review. The album contains a series of photos of adults and children dressed in white sheets participating in what he called a blood ritual. The ritual centered around the execution of 2 goats, execution, disembowelment, skinning, and dismemberment of the goats at the hands of 2 children. Now, maybe that was just them teaching them how to be hunters and how to be sustainable and take care of themselves, or it could have been something else, but we'll have to continue. Further inspection disclosed files related to activities of the organization involved in different parts of the world, including London, Germany, Bahamas, Japan, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Africa, Costa Rica, and Europe. There was also a file identified as Palestinian. Other files were identified by member name or project name. There was a project name apparently titled Pentagon Break-In, and it says, not observed by me, but related to me by an MPD officer, were intelligence files on private families not related to the finders. And this would kind of jive with them claiming that they were some sort of private intelligence agency. The warehouse contained a library, 2 kitchens, sauna, hot tub, and a video room. The video room seemed to be set up as an indoctrination center. It seemed that the organization had the capability to produce their own videos. There was what appeared to be a training area for the children and what appeared to be an altar set up in a residential area. Many jars of urine and feces were located. So continue on, right? And then this is where it gets fishy, right? This is in April. So this goes from his looking at the warehouses in February, and then by April, this is what we hear. On Thursday, February 5th, Special Agent Harold and I assisted the DC police with the search warrants that we just read about. And he describes on March 31st, I was contacted by Detective Bradley. I was to meet with Bradley to review the documents seized pursuant of 2 search warrants. The meeting was to take place on April 2nd or 3rd, 1987. On April 2nd, I arrived at MPD at approximately 9 a.m. Detective Bradley was not available. I spoke to a third party who was willing to discuss the case with me on an off-the-record basis. I was advised that all the passport data had been turned over to the State Department for their investigation. I was also advised that the MPD The individual further advised me of circumstances which indicate the activity of the finders had become a CIA internal matter. The MPD report has been classified secret and was not available for review. I was advised that the FBI had withdrawn from the investigation several weeks prior and that the FBI Counterintelligence Division had advised MPD not to advise the FBI field office of anything that had transpired. No further action will be available. No further action will be taken. And that is a big part of this story. That document, and I have confirmed that it is a real document. I have confirmed that the person that wrote it exists. Now, the difference is that the FBI and the officers all involved, the Customs Service, said he made mistakes, and that doesn't actually represent what took place there. They could be lying, they could be covering up for what he found, or perhaps he imagined the whole thing. You can decide. The other two documents I want to show you really quickly. Muckrock, as I said, is an agency that helps people file open records requests. This one was filed by Ali Conti, filed a request with the FBI, United States of America. And this just goes further into the files. And, I can click through some of these if you want, but essentially this is just more background details on how this all works. And then we have the actual FBI files themselves. And as you can see here, these files are heavily redacted. You can see this whole section right here is just a big chunk missing. And a lot of times these chunks tell the story. I mean, as you can imagine, like this, for example, prior to February 5th, 1987, your affiant, somebody's name blacked out, received information from a confidential source of information. This source, several blanked out. They left out the word of. Okay, we can read of. And it just gets worse and worse. So I'm trying to parse through these things, guys. Please do apologize. It takes time. I'm trying to parse through these things and see what, if any of it, actually makes sense, what they found. You can see here's the list of the IBM computer, Macintosh computer, assorted papers and photos. I mean, there's so much here to dig through, and I'm trying to make sense of it to turn it into a documentary that's going to make sense for you guys and for the average normie out there who's never heard of any of this, and not dismiss it as just conspiracy theory. Because right now we do have theories, but we also have a lot of facts, we have a lot of documentation, a lot of details, and my job is to turn that information into something that's palatable and that can be digested and consumed by the masses. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Once again, please do subscribe to theconsciousresistance.com. If you feel like joining patreon.com to make sure that we can continue to do all of our work, then I would appreciate that. But for now, thank you for listening. Enjoy your week. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.